Hello everyone, I'm Phil Liggett and welcome to another year here with World Cycling Productions on DVD and video of all the big cycle races from around the world. Of course, Belgium is the place to be at this time of the year, the month of March and April, where the classic races are fought out. And Paul Sherwin and I, like everybody, full of enthusiasm for the start of a new season. We're going to begin our action with the Het Volk, the classic race which starts from nearby in Ghent and then races through to Lokeren. Enjoy the action for the first time this year. So the scene is set as we now prepare to leave Ghent on familiar roads for the professional cyclists of Belgium. 10 climbs in deepest Flanders. One of the steep ones there, the 5th climb of the day, very early on, the Muur de Grammont, and then finishing with the Berendries and the Molenberg. Familiar roads, Paul, 200 kilometres at this time of the year. It'll be very difficult for the riders.
I always find it very strange, Het Volk, nowadays, Phil, because the fact is those climbs are an awful long way from the finish.
Now we're waiting to see some of the riders sign in now at the start earlier today before we go out to the live action. And many of the riders, it's a chilly day, there's been a bit of rain around. They're starting outside the Art Museum here in Ghent. And first man up on the stage there looks like Chris Pearce.
Well, this is an important race for the Belgians, and if you look back over the last few years, Belgium has really been very dominant in this bike race, winning on 49 occasions. Team Cofidis, although it's a French team, well, they've got an awful lot of Belgians in their midst. This is Pieter Farrazijn, and not too far away from us right now will be Nico Martin as well. One of the pre-race favourites, I would say.
And here he is on cue, Nico Martin signing in. One of the strong men, rides on the French Cofidis team, very much a Belgian, and knocks on the door regularly of winning classic races.
It's a big day for the Belgians, and this man doesn't live too far away from Ghent, Joe Plankaart, one of the very famous Plankaart family.
As always, a huge crowd here to watch the start of the first classic of the season. Jan Kersiphoek, possible sprint winner here, hasn't won this race yet.
Ondertussen was hij hier ook uit de ploeg van AG dus.
Verkennen, dus winnaar vorig jaar al wel eens bij geweest zijn in een of andere kleine koers zeker vast. Maar Omloop Het Volk, dat is toch nog altijd wat anders. Want Louis, als je die eerlijst is naast.
Well, Max van Heeswijk is probably going to be regarded as the leader of the US Postal Service team here, because although George Hincapie is on the start line, we are hearing an awful lot about a viral infection that has struck him down in the early part of the season. This man always got a laugh, but always in with a chance of a good performance, because he finished second last year, Frankie Hoy.
Thor Hushovd on the Crédit Agricole team coming head to head. I think there's a bit of rivalry here between him and the man now in camera, the new Australian champion, Stuart O'Grady. They don't really become the best of friends when they're racing because they're both vying for the win. And O'Grady looking good, first time out for him in his new colours as champion. This is Bram Smit here, one of the Bank Lottery boys signing in.
Nice to see Magnus Backstedt getting back to the top of the form he had a couple of years ago. He also could cause a surprise. George Hincapie, well, not looking too happy at the start this morning, and I think George is going to have to maybe have a couple of weeks rest, Phil, after this, because we are hearing an awful lot about his health problems.
Andrea Tafi, winner last year, the Tour of Flanders. That race, of course, still to come. A chance now to search for form. Tafi has spent some time in Australia this year. Paid a visit too to the Tour de Lankoy, but he didn't ride there. And Fabio Baldato, another good sprinter on the block, but he's got to get over those little hills first.
Dat klein manneke weet je nog niet van? Lars Mikkelsen, maar die is spijtig genoeg gisteren gevallen en die heeft ruggenwervel gebroken, dus die gaat 3 weken buiten strijd zijn. En daarom zijn we nu toch een beetje gehandicapt in de start gekomen.
Well, one heeft for CSC Tiscali, a very popular character here in Belgium, and Gianluca Bortolami always come up with good performances when he's come to this part of the world. Let's not forget a former winner of the Tour of Flanders.
New colours too there for Sidemek. Fabien de Walle from the Palstrop Coleman's team.
Well, this man, a new team as well for him, Phil, former world champion Roman Weinsteins, a man who is very much at home on a cobble course like today's Het Volk.
Mag ik u nu al feliciteren voor uw bijzonder ruime aanwezigheid. Ik zie een veld van kopjes neven.
Johan Museu. He's won this race before, back in the year 2000. Now I wonder how he's coming out to fight this year, whether he's got good form in those legs. He'll certainly have done the work over the winter in what could be his last year, but you never know with Johan.
Well, if you think back, he announced his retirement back in 1996, and here we are, 2003, and he's still pretty competitive. Watch out for Tom Steele's also on a small team. Phil Landbau credit. He won this bike race way back in a few years ago, I would think.
1996 indeed. Robbie McEwen coming aboard. Big winner of last year. Won more races than anybody else. He finished as world #4 ranked rider. And Tom Bonan, his career really still just beginning. He's left US Postal. He's now joined at the new Quick-Step De Vitamon team, chatting here with Dave Brylance.
Well, this is a man who we can expect to ride pretty well over the next couple of days. But also, I think, though, Phil will be thinking more about the chance of Peter van Petegem. This is Henrik van Dijk, a man who rides well in the classics.
Second place for him in this event a couple of years ago, to prove Paul's point. Frankie van den Broek, who knows about this rider? Just newly out of suspension here in Flanders, a chance to race today and show his legs. And seems to be very popular with the crowd, despite the fact he's always in trouble with the authorities. Peter van Petegem, another rider here, coming in now as defending champion of what is the 58th Het Volk.
En ben jij opgestaan? Dat is waar, je bent op afzondering. Dan heb je geluk dat ben je uitgesnapt. Maar hij is een van de pionnen bij Lotto Domo die een belangrijke rol kan spelen in dienst van Petegem. Van Petegem is absoluut topman, kopman, ben ik zeker van. Nog veel meer dan McEwen. Jij ook? Ja, ik ook. Hebben we iedereen gehad? Nu nog wel, hè?
New Jersey here for Daniele Nardello, now riding for Team Deutsche Telekom. I think this is going to be a very serious team this year with some serious reinforcements during the winter months. Andreas Clear, a man who's been a professional for many years right now, and I think he'll be able to give a serious hand to Stefan Weseman. Weseman always at home on the cobblestone roads like this.
And here he is, Stefan, second in Paris-Roubaix last year. He's had a second place in the stage of the Tour Down Under already. He loves Australia, especially at the warmer time of year, which is January. And now looking pretty fit, really, as he faces up to the big season ahead. And Ludo Dierksens, former champion of Belgium.
Watch out for this man, Phil, Filippo Pozzato. He was an unbelievable bike rider with the development team for Team Mappe, now riding for Fassa Bortolo. He may well shine today. Everybody getting off on what is a very cold and damp Belgian day, but that's pretty much normal for the course here at Het Volk.
There'll be no surprises, I'm sure of that. Happy smiles between two rivals once the wheels start turning. Van Petegem nearest camera, Johan Museu. The two men of Flanders over these past few years, as they now make their way out onto the course. Short neutralised section. And we'll take you back a little bit down the route, and then we'll go out to the live action. And we start by going out now towards Gerardsbergen, where the famed Mur de Grammont is, the big steep wall, as the riders come in on a familiar route here into the street. And we've got a breakaway just up there of 3 riders getting clear very early on today. There were 4. Christophe Agneluto has been dropped early on. The other 3 survived together. And it's Tony Bracker from the Landbau credits, Christophe Trouvé from Talmans, and Jackie Duron, Française des Jeux, getting away at 12 kilometres, and 84 now covered here as we look at them on the Muur. But there was also a crash in the confusion on this right-hand bend. Down in the pile-up was Weseman and Andreas Clear, and Geert van Bont amongst those riders in trouble.
Well, this is always the case in the early races, Phil. There's so much pressure in the first bike races of the year. You can see just on the ground there, Stefan Weseman. But because of the fact that the Mur de Grammont comes so early on in Het Volk, after just 84 kilometres of racing, nearly all of the main field attacks it together, and you can be absolutely certain there is an awful lot of chaos because of the fact many riders who in races like the Tour of Flanders or Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne are not likely to be so close to the front of the bike race at this stage.
O'Grady passing through our camera, but wait for it now, because behind, as the peloton slows, there's Tom Steele's wrestling with the cobblestones as well. The breakaway is gone. You may have noted there the blue and white jersey of the Quick Step team. They got right on the front at this point and were driving the race along. But the boys behind, rather like queuing up here to get around this very steep 20% left-hander that takes them to the top of the climb. And once one or two riders stop, well, it's curtains for everybody, because now you're always off your bike.
Well, it's a good chance to see these famous cobblestones of the Mur de Grammont, because probably next year they will be resurfaced to make it a much easier climb to go up. And it could be the last time, I would think, the Tour of Flanders this year will go up it, because after that, I think in the month of June or July, they will start the recovering programming.
But they will be putting cobblestones back down, which is the most important thing, I think, from our viewpoint. But now it's a gentle stroll in the Belgian countryside for the back of the peloton. There's no way they'll be rejoining the front of the race. The decision now being made. These three riders then setting the pace. I'll just give you the names again. Tony Bracker, Christophe Trouvé and Jackie Durand. And the lead at this point over 7 minutes, as we now can join the live action. And as we look down from the helicopter now, 55 kilometres remaining to the finish, and the gap now 35 seconds. In fact, the race has split up rather dramatically over the small hills, and there is a large group with a predominance of quick-step riders in it chasing down the leaders, while there's another group here which contains Jan Kersipou, Paul, still trying to get across the gap.
Well, it's not surprising. We are getting to the very tough part of Het Volk this afternoon. These are the remainder of the men off the front of the main field. The Kop van der Weekstrijd. This is Bracker and Trouvé. And Jackie Durand has disappeared, and unfortunately for Jackie, he's a kind of man who always goes out on the early attacks, puts a lot of energy into the survival of breakaways, but today he was caught out on one of the earlier cobbled climbs. This is one of the long section of cobblestones, and in fact there's a problem at the back here that happened just a few moments ago, and I'm just trying to see who it is. It looks like a Française de Jeu rider, and it was a bit quick to ID who that was, and it's unfortunate to have an incident at this stage of the game, Phil, because as the race is split up, riders' team cars are not actually behind them as we get to this point of the race, and in fact these guys, I reckon, are about to get caught as we go through Velzeke, as you can see the neutral service car and the race referee's car being pushed forward.
They're right on them now. In fact, Durand was in all sorts of trouble over the last two climbs. He was dropped on the first one, he got back, but they got rid of him on the second, and this is why now, this is the Quick Step boys being led by Johan Museo of all people. So he's come out for the first race of the year looking as though he's got superb form, and he's bringing up a group. But how well has this worked out? We saw on the Mur de Grammont the Quick Step were putting in the pressure. That, I think, is the most favourite climb of Museo, and now they've got themselves in a position to come right up to the leaders.
Well, this is the gap between the two groups now. The Kop van der Weekstrijd, you can see the front of the bike race. These two riders are surviving by, it's given us a gap of 15 seconds right now, but it certainly really isn't that, because when you get a man like Johan Museo on the front on a section of cobblestones, it is unbelievable to watch. I think the thing that scares me the most, Phil, about Johan Museo is the speed which he can go round the corners when they've got this little amount of grease on the top. It really is remarkable. He doesn't seem to worry at all, and they've been caught now.
That's wiped out the breakaway that's been on since the 12th kilometre today. The last two to be caught there, Tony Bracker, Christophe Trouvé, the Palmans rider. 54 kilometres left to go. Now just watch Museo on these cobblestones. He just shatters this breakaway. And the breakaway contains, by the way, Paolo Bettini and Frankie Vandenbroek and Tom Boone and all quick-step riders. Here's the complete makeup for you now. And Bracker's still listed in it, of course, but he'll be hanging on the back now, I would imagine, as they now make their way up towards the finish. Van Heesik is the only man here for US Postal, but he's got across the gap, so it looks as though he's anxious to impress his, I suppose, his rebirth, really, because he's gone back to ride for an American team. He was part of the Motorola setup.
And the man just making up the rest of the group with the white jersey on the back there, Filippo Pozzato. What a great ride here by the man who won the World Cup last year. Sitting on the front here, Paolo Bettini. It's great, I think, now, and real confirmation that Tom Boone, and I think, has made the right decision changing teams from US Postal Service. He is able now to ride along a man who we regard as the master of the classics, Johan Museo, and I think he's going to learn an awful lot. Here at the back of this group here is Jackie Durand, still surviving. You can see this is the third group on the road at the moment. Jackie Durand, what a great bike rider, Phil. He's a great example for the men in the young Française de Jeu team, because he shows them he isn't afraid of any distance of bike race. He's always prepared to go out for a long attack.
He's amazing. I was with him in the Tour Down Under in Australia, which was just 6 weeks ago now. And I asked him, the first question I asked him was, where was he going to make his long attack on the Tour Down Under? That was quite amusing for the team to laugh on stage with him. But he loves to race, and he gets away and he opens the gaps and he gambles. It's paid off in the past, a former winner of the Tour de Flanders with a similar move like this. But he's hanging on now, he's paying the price, but watch out, the form will come over the next few weeks as Jackie Giron really is hanging on at the tail now. He's being passed back one by one through the groups. Van Petegem, last year's winner, really wasn't paying attention there because the leaders who's gone away, this is Dave Bryland's driving here, the leaders have caused the big problems now to Van Petegem. And at this time of the year, Paul, the legs aren't quite as sprightly as you might want. It's the first race for most of these riders, and they don't know how the body's going to react.
I think everybody always regards Het Volk as the first serious race of the season. Yes, guys have raced in Australia, the Tour de Langkawi in Malaysia, they've ridden on the south of France and in Spain, but this is always regarded as the first proper rendezvous. But it's also the longest race of the year so far at 200 kilometres, and the body does come up with some very strange reactions, and most of that really is due to the fact that the riders have been in warmer climes up until now, and they're moving forward to Belgium where seriously the weather is not great today.
Well, here we are, Liepenhovenstraat. More cobblestones for the boys to get knocked around on at the moment. Hanging on at the back of the race here is Trouvé. He's had a very, very good race. He's put his name on the cameras all day. Pazzato, still only 21.5 years of age, and last year won 14 races. He's been a pro since his teenage years. He really didn't serve hardly any time at all as an amateur cyclist.
I tell you what, he's a man we need to watch out for the future. This is also a man we need to watch for the future too. Tom Boonen, third in Paris-Roubaix last year, riding here alongside the Master. The Master on the front, the Lion of Flanders, Johan Museeuw. He really is, as far as I'm concerned, Phil, the king of the classics of the last 10 years. And certainly right now he's proving to be the king of the cobblestones, because very few other riders in the peloton can ride on the cobblestones like he can.
Just the way he gets there and drives, he likes to be in first place, and now they continue to be dropped off the back. This is Tony Bracker. He tends to figure well. He's a former winner, by the way, in Great Britain of the Tour of the Cotswolds. You did well in that, didn't you, Paul?
Yes, I did. I think I finished second, but that was an awful long time ago. I was beaten by a man by the name of Pat McQuaid, who in fact was one of the organisers who took the Tour de France to Ireland a couple of years ago, and of course a member of the Union Cycliste Internationale, the governing body of the sport of professional cycling.
Indeed. Time moves on, and Bracker will not be thinking of the beautiful hills of the Cotswolds in Gloucestershire in Great Britain right now, as the pace has been maintained just a little bit too quick for him. Still 29 seconds to that second group containing Van Petegem, but I don't think they're going to come back unless they start to inspire themselves, because Quick-Step de Vietemont, with 4 riders in this breakaway, have got themselves in a rather good position. It's a familiar scene with teams managed by Patrick Lefevre, and Museeuw, the captain, number 17, is going to feel very happy with the way things are going.
He certainly will. The great thing about this team is they get super motivated for specific goals throughout the season. This is obviously the first one, and they've come up with the right combination. Putting 4 men in a group like this is an ideal situation for later on. But let's not forget, they still have 51 kilometres to go to the finish, and their advantage just 31 seconds at the moment over that chase group, which contains some pretty serious names as well. But I think these men will realise they've got the advantage of numbers on their sides, and as you can see, it's basically blue and white jerseys on the front here right now. The man along for the ride, the man who I think has got a great chance of taking out the sprint if it comes to a sprint at the end of this, is Max van Heesewijk. I think this young man has made a very sensible decision moving across the US Postal Service. Let's not forget, he enjoyed the early part of his career with Motorola a few years ago, and I think he's a young man with an awful lot of talent.
A very nice young man at that too. He always has a smile and a pleasant word to say whatever time of day you meet him, during, after or before the race. Now, a difficult decision for 3 riders here. There isn't a lot of point in them working too hard with a breakaway of 4 Quick-Step. They may as well let the Quick-Steps do the driving at least. With 51 kilometres to go, there's still room for a change of decision here. I think we're looking down on Bracker there, still falling off the back of the pace. And I'm not sure that's the group they're timing at 33 seconds, Paul, is it?
No, I think the group is at 33 seconds. This man is caught in no man's land. He was just dropped on the last section of cobblestones. The group is just a little further down the road there. But in fact, that 33-second gap, I feel, Phil, is stretching out because they don't seem to have the same impetus, this group we're looking at here on the road. This is the group that contains Jan Kursipuu is on the front at the moment, followed there, I would think, by Peter van Petegem. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Doesn't look very comfortable right now.
Yeah, in fact, that was Truve who was lost in between, still trying to hang on in there. They'll get no help here from Quick-Step. It looks like it might be Vetskins who's trying to get on terms there, but he's not going to do anything. He'll push everybody in front. There's Bracker behind him, so he's still hanging on. Dave Bryland's coming through. There'll be no help from Fassa Bortolo either, because they've got their man up front. It's been a pretty tough race, and he's Jackie still on the back, look, and still riding well. Looking though he might be suffering just a bit right now.
Strangely, he's one of the few Frenchmen who's really enjoyed coming to ride these races in the northern climes. Not very many Frenchmen throughout the years have excelled on the Belgian roads. Men like Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle always have, and Jackie Durand, a winner of the Tour of Flanders, certainly has a lot of good memories from this part of the world. This group is certainly looking a bit ragged right now, Phil, and although the time gap seems to have stabilised at 33 seconds, there is absolutely no organisation at all. Whereas in the front, you've got the 4 riders from Quick-Step, and they will get some help from the other 3 riders in the breakaway for the moment. But as we get closer to the finish, if they do manage to get that time advantage to the 1 minute or 1.5 minute margin, then they will start to adopt tactical manoeuvring.
Jan Kursipuu here in this group. He's gone through his 100 wins as a professional now. He turned pro back in 1992. And he started off with his usual good start to the season. He didn't win any races in the Tour Down Under, which was a bit of a surprise. But he's found his legs because of good training in Adelaide in South Australia. And he's had a couple of wins already throughout the month of February.
Strange usual career for Jan Kursipuu as well, because it always seems that he gets the majority of his wins in the first 3 or 4 months of the season. Obviously spends a lot of time preparing the early part of the calendar, and that's why he is able to glean that much success. He really is a very dominant sprinter, and then he seems to be able to hold his form through until the Tour de France, and then after that, August, September, you very rarely see him.
But he does need that big classic win, doesn't he? There he is in the centre. Traditional colours for him as champion of Estonia. He's won that title a few times. He's also a very good time trialist as well. He won the double last year, time trial and the road race championship. Bryland's set his face. I think Bryland's might be a man for the early season here, because he rode very well in the Tour Down Under. It didn't quite work out for him, but he was certainly riding strongly at the front. Van Petegem, winning this race last year, must be a little bit confused by the tactics right now, because he knows you don't allow 4 quick steps to go up the road if you're less with them.
Unless you're able to, I would think you'd have to say that. On the front there as well, the Alessio rider is Enrico Cassani, a former rider from the Mapei squad, which literally exploded last season with riders going all over the place. I've always found it a bit of a problem for Lotto, and maybe now even the fact that they've joined with Domo over the winter months, they seem to put their leaders in a situation of isolation in races like this. And as you can see here, Peter van Petegem has not one teammate alongside to help him out in what is for him the most important race of the season, Het Volk.
Huge crowds, but the atmosphere this year for this first race in Belgium, they have big crowds at the start. This is a lovely crowd out in the country. Just inside 50 kilometres to go now. 150 have passed under the wheels of these riders. There's Cassani there. He's only won 1 race in his career, which I find amazing, because he's a very aggressive bike rider. And that was a stage of the Tour of Italy. And that was 3 years ago this year. And yet here's a rider who's ridden well in the Tour of Flanders, well in Paris-Roubaix, and hasn't quite finished off with the big wins yet.
Well, this year it might change, because I think when he goes through to the one-day classics later on in the season, he will be the kind of man, given his freedom, no longer tied to looking after men like Johan Museo. He can ride his own personal race. Let's not forget, Phil, last year he finished 10th in Paris-Roubaix as part of the foundation and domination of the Mapei Quick-Step team.
This is the lineup for the chase group. Kashikin isn't going to help out anybody. Bracker will be a passenger now, as will be Truve. Dave Bryland is driving well. Petito and Cassani, and Fabio Sacchi. I must confess I haven't spotted Sacchi, but he'll be in there in the Seiko colours. Usually has a little goatee beard. There's Van Petegem's face. Man of the cobbles, man of Flanders, comes from Brakel, which isn't very far from the finish of the Tour of Flanders.
In fact, Brakel's not really very far from anywhere. It seems that every bike race in Belgium has to go through Brakel one way or another. It really is the centre of all the big Flemish climbs that races like Kuurne, Brussels, Kuurne, the Tour of Flanders and all the other big classics in the early part of the season circumnavigate one way or another. There we get a chance to see the full gap between the leading group there, which is 7 riders strong right now, 4 of them from the same team. It's 42 seconds, Phil, and although these guys from Quick-Step are all working very well together, they're really not for the moment building up a huge advantage. That second group on the road certainly hasn't laid down arms yet. The gap is stretching out slightly, but it's still only 43 seconds.
Big Tom Boone was working hard. This is a slightly different build in Paolo Bettini. He's been looking very sharp though, Bettini, since the season began. Maxi van Heeswijk, he's going to know all about his rivals because he was part of the setup. He's the one that's moved off the team and must be feeling it might have been a bad decision right now. He's outnumbered 4-1.
Well, the neutral service car coming forward here, and that might indicate that the gap is starting to come down, but in fact no, just getting a quick glimpse there, the neutral service car has come forward here to hand out drinks to all the riders in this leading group. This man is unbelievable, Phil. When you think at Johan Museo on the front there, all of the accidents and problems he's had through the last 4 or 5 years of his career, managing to fight back just to ride a bicycle is unbelievable, but to fight back and be a dominant character in the sport at 37 years of age is really quite remarkable.
No, to have Museo in here, this is why Tom Boonen wanted to come across and ride at the side of Museo. He felt he had so much to learn off the master of Flanders, and this is going to be lesson number 1, I think, a breakaway alongside him.
I think also maybe making the correct decision that George Hincapie maybe hasn't made over the last few years. I feel that Hincapie, having stayed with an American team for so many years, has obviously gleaned the chance of earning himself a lot of bucks. But at the end of the day, he hasn't had the backup in the one-day classics like the Tour of Flanders and, of course, like Paris-Roubaix, a race which I think George has got the physical capability to win. But to win it, you have to have a lot of teammates around you in the final kilometres of a race like this. And this is an example. When you look at Quick-Step, they've got 4 men. US Postal Service here have got 1 man in the form there of Max van Heeswijk.
There's Peter Vaderzijn just calling Max through. Max wanted a drink. He appears to have got it. And this is a good working line. And there is Pizzato there, the Fassa Bortolo rider. And got to be a star of the future. He's such a confident rider, 21 years of age. I mean, we talk about Tom Boonen, who's only just 22 years of age, but the Bortolo rider is even younger. There's Boonen getting on with the job in hand. Fantastic start to his pro career last year when he got 3rd in Paris-Roubaix and 7th in Ghent-Wevelgem. And now in the move here.
Good to see Frank Vandenbroek bouncing back because the bad boy, the prodigal son of Belgian cycling, he's had so many ups and downs and run-ins with the law and with drugs. It seems now finally he's got himself back onto the straight and narrow, and whatever it does prove, Phil, that anything you think about Frank Vandenbroek, what he's doing today is proving that that young man certainly has got a very large engine for bike racing, because to get into a breakaway like this with the big boys who are on fine form after a suspension is really quite a remarkable performance.
It is. No racing miles at all, and yet here he is in the move. And there he is, giving it his best shot too. He's really working very hard here in this breakaway. He's just done a hard turn on the front. Now looking for who's coming through in the line. Pizzato, not wanting to do too much work. Why should he? Neither should Max van Heeswijk. They're outnumbered, so just join in for the ride, see what they can do. They know that sooner or later, these 4 riders are going to be starting one-on-one a series of attacks. And the one that stays away at the end will win the day. Remember Servais Knaven a couple of years ago in Paris-Roubaix? They were in a similar situation. He was the last attacker and he went on to win the stage.
Well, this doesn't look good. This is the second group on the road, and they're actually spreading out right now. They've lost a bit of organisation as the team cars come up to hand up drinks, and I think next time we get a time check it may well have gone up to the 1-minute mark, because they are not as organised as the leading group on the road. And the fact that the leading group is so organised is because there are 4 men from the same team. But since they changed Het Volk to this new kind of route, it really is quite a difficult race to understand. You've got the climbs that come very early on, then it's an awful long way from the final climb of the day, the Molenberg, up to the finishing line in Lokeren. What it does is it forms a split and splits the race all over the place, but then everybody waits for the last 15 to 20 kilometers, because then there are 4 sections of cobblestones in that last 15 Ks, which are very, very difficult. And it's on those sections of cobblestones that in the past we've seen many riders laying their foundations for victory. And that's where I think we will now wait and have to wait until to see when the attacks do come. And I think obviously you can see the men from Quick-Step will do something as they get closer to the cobblestones towards the end.
And there we can see for the first time Fabio Sacchi having a chat.
And Guido Bontempi, the man in the lead car there, no stranger to Belgium either. He's a great team manager, a great personality, and he was certainly one of the top sprinters when he was racing.
Yes, indeed he was. Now this is still the chase group here, and well, they're going through and off reasonably quickly, but they're not making any impression, because look at it now, 1:28 seconds, and things are swinging just the way of that four-man quick-step team time trial with three boys along for the ride.
Oscar Freire there, the Rabobank rider. He in fact rides exceptionally well in this part of the world, and it's quite rare to see the Spaniards quite so competitive on Flemish roads. In the past they've come up really just to participate in one or two of these races, and I would have thought that the man there with the World Championship bands on his sleeves felt that he had a chance of winning one of these one-day classics in this part of the world. Look at the gap now, Phil. It's 1:29 seconds. We're looking here at the third group on the road. I think I caught a chance server sight there of Christophe Mangin, the French rider who was the former French national champion in the cyclocross discipline. And all of these groups really looking a little bit ragged right now. It has been a very difficult race so far, and I have a feeling with the time gap now stretching up to 1:29 seconds to the second group, that the men in the group at the front, the seven-man lead group, they'll really now start to believe that they're going to win this race.
Little Robbie McEwen here, but I guess he's just warming up for the occasion, because McEwen is the big winner of last year, and it's going to be a big shock too, coming to the cold, chilly, wet weather of Belgium. And he lives here, don't forget, he's married to a Belgian as well, Angelique. And Robbie there, having had his better times and his early season, as always, back home in Queensland, where at this time of the year the sun warms the old legs, and the training is excellent, and he's been down in South Australia as well.
Well, at the back of the group there, you can see US Postal Service rider Max van Heeswijk just loosening up his legs. Quite an interesting character, Max, we were talking about a little bit earlier. Now, there's a discussion coming on here. Johan Museo on the two-way, well, he's got a problem with the two-way there, I think. He's just calling up the team management, saying, what's going on here right now? The radio's not working. And I think probably wanting to get some information on what's happening behind. And there's Wilfred Peters, his best friend and former very close teammate. Just a different role really now for Wilfred Peters over the last 2 years, driving the team car. And strangely enough, he's a couple of years younger than Johan Museo. And Museo still always attentive, Phil, when it comes to these races, because he seems to be able to get motivated for a certain number of bike races through the season. Het Volk is obviously the first one, but I think in the back of his mind, in what is possibly his last season, he's more in thinking about his chance of winning the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix again.
It's rather a large roundabout they built there. The field coming away into Veteran. The gap is holding at the minute. They're doing just enough and not too much here. Just over 25 miles left to run now, down to the finish in Lokeren, which is north of Ghent. And this is Museo. He seems to do a lot of work with that mouth. Thank you very much. He's trying to eat his microphone and drink his drink.
He's definitely a cool character. You know, whenever you talk to him or interview him, he always pauses for 5 or 10 seconds first before he comes back with the answer. And every answer is probably worth 1,000 words, even though when it comes from the lips of Johan Museo, it may well only be 5 or 10.
Well, Pizzato doing just enough not to earn the wrath of the team from Quick-Step there. He's just taken the line through. There's Max behind him. Max says you can jump in again, and he says no thanks. So Max had no choice but to take up. He's showing a lot of maturity, this man, considering he is such a young bike rider. 14 wins last year.
The man who amazes me at being present in this group here really is Paolo Bettini. He's such a small, slightly built rider, the kind of rider who normally you expect to ride well in the Ardennes Classics, races like Liège-Bastogne-Liège and of course Amstel Gold Race. And smaller riders normally don't ride very well on the cobblestones. But this man, I think because of the round nature of him, the fact that he is a small, compact bike rider, he seems to handle the cobbles exceptionally well. Van Heeswijk has moved up into second place there. You see the three other riders in this group right now are trying, as you said, to do a small turn at the front, but they will not be pressing on the pedals all that hard because they will feel tactically in an inferior position, having so many strong riders from the Quick-Step team on the front end of this attack. This is the second group on the road. In fact, they've come back just a little bit, 1 minute and 16 seconds there. They seem to be getting themselves organised once again. But again, there are passengers starting to appear in this group here right now, men who have got representatives in the leading group, and they won't contribute at all to the pacemaking.
Bryland's pulling them through here. Plenty of riders still left to drive on. Fabio Sacchi trained his beard back to its natural colour. It used to be blonde. And taking a drink, 4 men back there was Kersipu. They still look useful here, and they still are far from giving up, but they're not making any progress at all. And I think Museo, use of the radios, perhaps he knows exactly where this group is, and he'll tell the team just to do enough to keep them where they are, and perhaps prepare for an attack near the end.
We're getting some strange time checks coming through, because all of a sudden that time check, which is brought to us by GPS, GPS is situated on each of the motorbikes that bring us the pictures of the bike races, just all of a sudden feel bounced from a minute 16 to a minute 56, which I would think is a much more realistic time gap, because the boys on the front certainly did seem to be working in a very good organisation.
A bit of a grimace there from Oscar Freire. Riding now, don't forget, for Rabobank. He's moved over to this team along with Robbie Hunter, so there's 2 good sprinters there.
This is Group 3 on the road. This is Gianluca Bortolami on the front, a new colour for him this season. And it's great to see Oscar Freire coming forward here, and surprisingly enough, the Rabobank team seemed to have missed out somewhat in a bike race like this. I think it really was an awful lot of pressure over the final few climbs of the day. And in fact, the race seems to be coming back together. There's a large group behind group number 3, and the fact that they've just stopped all those team cars makes me think that group number 3 is about to catch the second group on the road, and the front group are going like a train. Yeah,
it's about the only thing that can get by this leading group at the moment, I think, because there's all the blue jerseys of Quick-Step. You've got to hand it to the other boys on this breakaway, because they are doing just enough to say they are sharing the pace, while they're allowing, they know that as the closer they get to the finish, they're going to have to start watching every one of these 4 riders, because they'll start tentative attacks, and one of them will be expected to stay away. There's Frankie Vandenbroek, puffing and blowing, doesn't look terribly comfortable, but this man never shirks his duty to do a bit of pacemaking. The gap now has gone over 2 minutes back to the second group, which looks to be getting a little bit larger back there and building up to quite a large group of riders. But it's going to make no difference at the moment. 2 minutes with 39 kilometres to go down to the finish is going to be difficult.
Well, I don't know how he got that plane into the parking lot, Phil, because I can't see the runway.
Fine piece of parking. It's taken up about 50 car park spaces, but it doesn't matter.
I've always found it's pretty amazing what people will collect in Belgium, but that certainly must have cost the owner a few bob to put there.
Yeah. It's probably a restaurant, as we now see the leaders going by. 2 minutes 3 seconds, another second added to the escape. Remember, there's only 3 riders here. Max van Heeswijk, Pizzato, Valenzijn. They're all 3 astern at the back. Here's little Bettini, already a winner of the Tour of the Mediterranean. Paul Sherwin once won the King of the Mountains in that race, which was something of a shock.
Well, it's a bit of a funny result, because second in that competition was a bloke by the name of Noel de Jonker, and he went up hills about as fast as I did. Actually, I had quite an amount of success in the Tour of the Mediterranean over the years. I won the points competition as well, and I got a stage taking out some pretty serious names like Jan Raas in the sprint.
Wow, he would not be happy with that, knowing Jan.
Well, they nearly fell off in the corner, and I took advantage of it.
Good lad. At least you were alert and ready to outwit the better riders.
Well, this is rather strange right now, because although the race was split up completely, it seems right now as if at the back of the race it's all coming back together. Let's not forget there is a group of 7 riders off the front, but we're still 39 kilometres to go. Now, if this group at the back, which is starting to form into a very large peloton, get themselves organised, they can very easily wipe away the advantage, which is stretched up to 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Yaroslav Ekimov there, always attentive. It's great to see Ekimov, Phil, coming back to the top of the sport. It was a strange comeback last season, just before the start of the Tour de France. 8 months out of the sport, but I think having been at the top of the sport for such a long time, Ekimov actually needed that psychological break.
Well, absolutely right, but it's, you know, his enthusiasm is he's just like a new professional again now. He's so happy to be back in action. I know that Lance Armstrong appreciates him because he's such a solid bike rider. But he's over 20 years at the top of cycling as an amateur for the Soviet Union, and of course as a top professional bike rider. Now, they're saying on race radio this peloton has swelled to around 60 riders, so surely they can reorganize something here.
Well, really, when you think there's only one serious team represented in the leading group of 7, and that's the Quick-Step team. This is Leon van Bon. Obviously now they've pulled up the group here with Pieter van Petegem, and I think we need to get a move coming forward with Quick-Step. And let's not forget, Robbie McEwen will be in this group as well, so Lotto Domo have got a very good chance, if they can pull it all back together, of giving McEwen a chance of victory. I think McEwen is in about 5th or 6th position. There he is there in the new Lotto Domo strip. Van Petegem is in this group. They're going to have a hard job of work now to pull back 2 minutes and 10 seconds in the final 37 kilometres. Van Bont looking very concentrated. Now the orders obviously come forward here, Phil, to Lotto Domo. They're bringing all of their men to the front of the bike race right now. And I think once again you can see there is that unbelievable rivalry still between the two top Belgian teams.
Now we'll look at Lotto now getting a grip of this race. McEwen's already won 4 races this year. He won 30 last year. He started out as the world number 4. The highest he's ever held in the world ranking list, and I think the highest any Australians ever occupied as well. Now they're driving on. They've got Van Petegem as well here, so they've got reason to chase, but there's an awful lot of work required. Possibly 36 kilometres. There is time to do it if they can get down to it, but just look at this now. The team time trial continues here in Wetteren, and just Max van Heeswijk, ex-teammate of the 3 riders around him, who is now driving as well. So Boonen, here he is, came across to this team from US Postal, while Max replaced Boonen on US Postal.
Well, right now we're not too far away from the bridge, which will take the riders over the Schelde, and there it is right now, and that's 36 kilometres to go. They've got an advantage, Phil, of 2 minutes and 14 seconds, but I think the fact that Team Lotto Domo have got all of their riders on the front right now, we're going to have a very serious chase down to the finish. But I still believe if they don't catch them in the next 15 kilometres or so, these guys have got the big advantage, because we're heading up now to a big series of very long cobblestone stretches.
Well, if you're a Belgian, you know all about cobbled streets, and it certainly makes the cycle races in this part of the world. With 2 minutes 17 seconds, and it's still growing as I speak. Look, it's gone up now to 2:18 as they're turning now down the banks of the Schelde and head off towards the finish. Well, not too much barge traffic at this time of the year, I guess. Might be the time of day, or maybe they're all out watching the arrival of the 58th edition of the Het Volk, the People's Race. And this is certainly going the way of Quick-Step de Wietemont. What a great start to the year for this new team on the block.
Well, it certainly is, and what a great new start to a comeback by the man sitting on the back here, Frank van den Broeke. This is the first time he's been allowed to race on Flemish roads, because he was suspended up until Friday and only just issued with his brand new racing license. Rather a strange quirk of fate that he could have raced on Walloon roads, but wasn't allowed to on Flemish roads. Johan Museeuw at the back. This is the main field right now, group number 2, 2.5 minutes behind. You've got all of the Lotto riders on the front. I would think really now, thinking about the chances of Robbie McEwen rather than the chances of Pieter van Petegem, who seriously missed out, Phil, when that break went off the front. He should have been there if he was going to try and rival the victories for today, and I think he just got caught out by the fact that Team Quick-Step really had the right attack at the right place in today's stage.
Well, this bunch is still up around 55, 60 strong. Rabobank cursing their bad luck today, so too Lotto. They're the two teams now trying to repair the damage, but they are not making any impression. And when you look at the peloton here, they look as though they're absolutely flying. But when we look at the 7 riders up front, they just look as though they're riding steady, and yet the gap is growing, so they're obviously going quicker. And Leon van Bon driving through at the front now. Van Petegem, and also in here is Robbie McEwen.
Well, this is a serious organisation on the front. Let's not forget Rabobank must send 1 or 2 riders forward as well, because Oscar Freire, the former 2-time world champion, is in this group of around 50 to 60 bike riders. But even so, they look as if they're flying along, Phil. That time gap is still stretching out slowly but surely, which is rather a surprise, because there are really only 4 men in the leading group of 7 who are doing the majority of the pacemaking. You can be sure that the 3 other riders will be just holding back a little bit, because they know the attacks will come once we get to the next section of cobblestones.
Well, they just swung over the same river bridge we saw the breakaway go over the Schelde there. So 2.5 minutes has passed by.
I think there are some tired bodies here right now, and it always is very difficult for the first long, hard race of the season, Het Volk. Many riders have come from other parts of Europe and other parts of the world, in fact, and are riding in very cold climatic conditions for the first time. You see this big long turn here by Rabobank on the front here has put a lot of the Lotto Domo riders into difficulty. It's always difficult, in fact, when you've been off the back with one or two groups and you reintegrate the front end of the main race, and then all of a sudden you've got to be asking your body once again to put the pressure on to try and nail back and organise a chase on the front end of the main field. But these are professional bike riders, let's not forget, and their job today, even though they've been left behind for a long part of the race, is to get to the front and try and bring it all back together for their team leaders.
Well, the one man missing out, as we see Hans de Klerk here setting the pace for Lotto, and the other rider here coming through is Jan Boven for Rabobank. They're trying now to pull the Lotto team back into this race. The winners last year with Peter van Petegem, but the clock is still telling us otherwise here. Just under 20 miles now from the finish. No more climbs of note, but a long run-in, and you see the run-in here has paid dividends for the two bunches chasing, because they've merged together. But by the time they got there, the wily Johan Museo steered his troops clear of the field. Leon van Bon doing another strong turn at the front here.
Phil, you just look at the way these riders keep looking across. All of them know they have to do a turn on the front end of the main field, but they don't really have it in their legs right now to do the long turns. They're hoping to just try and do as short a turn as possible to keep the team leaders happy. The leading group of 7 right now, they're getting closer and closer to what is going to be the next strategic point. There are about 5 sections of very difficult cobblestones on the run-in towards the finish in Lokeren here, and I think that's when we will see the counter-attack start to come from the 4 men from Quick-Step on the front end of this main field. Max van Heeswijk, on the other hand, he's riding very sensibly. He's not making any enemies at all with the Quick-Step riders, because you can see he's doing his turn at the front end of the main field. This is the difficult thing about racing in these early season classics. You see how narrow these roads are. It really is a windy road that takes the riders from the last climb of the day, the Molenberg, right across to the finish line in Lokeren. Another section of cobblestones, just 150 meters in length. This is the Kelken Schravelbilpijn, and I tell you what, look at that. A lot of these cobblestones are being relaid in Belgium over the last couple of years, and I think it really is a great thing to keep them around, because otherwise the sport would be at a bit of a loss. VDB, Van den Broeke, a lot of people turning out now for Frank Van den Broeke. Another short section of cobblestones, 350 meters, but as we get closer to the finish, there is a long section of cobblestones, about 2.5 kilometers in length. That's where I think the big pressure will come from Quick-Step.
Van den Broek, surprisingly enough, celebrating his 10th season as a professional cyclist this year. He lost virtually all of last year, won a small race in Erpe, which isn't too far away from Oudenaarde, but that's about all he did. He's largely off the scene in disgrace, and look at this now. The Rabobanks here, they're working at the front but going absolutely nowhere. Lotto trying to lead the way, but there's no coordination here, and these boys, Hans de Klerk again setting the pace on the front as the leaders now onto the next stretch of cobblestones. This is where Johan Museo is going to come back into his own. And this is quite a long stretch, there's 600 meters, and he'll try and break them up here, I think.
VDB on the back here, number 18, a bit of difficulty for him just to stay in contact. Let's not forget, this is his first serious race of the season. And for him, I think just very happy to be in at the front end of a bike race like the Het Volk. It's an indication that he is getting back to form, and I think maybe later on in the year in the races that suit him a lot better, races like Liège, Bastogne-Liège, we'll see this young man shine. These cobblestones are fairly nice, freshly laid during the end of last year, and not as rough and difficult as they were last season. But this is where Het Volk really starts to become difficult when you come onto these sections. And the man who really turns the screws up is Johan Museo. He's not doing it just yet. I think he's probably going to wait till a little bit later on. There's Tom Boonen, just 2 riders from the back, and man as well, I think, Phil, we'll see a lot more of in future years.
A glimpse of the flag there gave you very much the idea that they are picking up this lovely tailwind just now, which is keeping the average speed just a tad below the 40 kilometers an hour. But they're still nudging away that gap at 2:35, and the finish inching closer. 27 kilometers, about 16 miles still to go, and no sign at all of anybody behind coming up to this group. There's just these 7 riders, everybody in between being swept up by that large peloton, largely under the control of Lotto and Rabobank. And I'm just wondering here, Paul, because it looks as though Van den Broeke has decided to take a little bit of a rest at the back. Now, it's either because he is taking it bad or because he might be planning the first of the attacks.
I think he needs to take a rest. Let's not forget that he's had a long time out of the sport after a long suspension. And I think really he's probably just coming under pressure right now. Another small section of cobblestones, the Molenstraat. I think Van den Broeke obviously would be very happy to be in this leading group right now. He's trying to conserve as much energy as possible, but you can see the race now in the front group of 7 starting to produce a lot more passengers. Peter Farazijn, the Cofidis rider in the red, white and blue jersey, also hasn't done too many turns for the last couple of kilometres, as has Filippo Pozzato. He could maybe be excused because he's not even 22 years of age yet right now, Phil. He's been a rider on the Mapei development squad for a number of years, and he may well have switched across to Quick Step during the winter, but I think he decided he'd much rather go to an Italian squad.
USP up there. Just checking on the man. We haven't seen hide nor hair of George Hincapie, and I don't think he is still in the race. He's not part of that big bunch which has come up. So I think the news is not good for George, and we always look towards George for the great early season classics as they pass under 25 kilometres to go now. George, our man for Paris-Roubaix and the Tour de Flanders, a past winner a couple of years ago of Ghent-Wevelgem. But apparently George planning an early return to the United States. Let's hope he is okay.
Well, this is the Achtervolkers, the chasing group, and still that time gap, although they look to be turning up the pressure a little bit in group number 2 on the road here, are losing time consistently over the leading group of 7. 2 minutes and 44 seconds right now. Everybody moving forward to try and find a good place on these cobblestones. They realise that the main field can literally blow to pieces, and it looked like a set of bagpipes on the left-hand side of the road there, Phil. I'm not sure what they were trying to do. Maybe it was the last watch.
25 top teams taking part in today's 58th edition of Het Volk. And the cobblestone stretch is now coming thick and fast here, and this is a chance surely for the teams behind to start getting something going.
Well, looks like an acceleration there in the blue jerseys at the front. Paolo Bettini with a bit of difficulty at the back of the group there, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that nice little move there coming from Johan Museo.
It wouldn't surprise anybody. He rides the cobblestone so well. Bettini there is scurrying through, but that's the bobbing shoulders, it looks to me like Museo. Could be Tom Bonham, but I think it's possibly Johan.
Well, this is where this race is decided nowadays. The fact that they've moved up to Lokeren, a fair way from Ghent, where it used to finish. This race originally was called the Ghent race, and in recent years they've moved it around a little bit, trying to keep a certain amount of interest. And just looking up there, in fact, it was Tom Bonham who tried the acceleration. Museo just in front of Max van Heesewijk. But all of these riders from Quick-Step realising that the decision towards the finish is going to come on the cobblestone sections. 24 kilometres to go right now. Van den Broeke, I think, Phil, sitting at the back because there's another move. This is Bettini's turn right now.
Well, Bettini has really hurt them. He did it on the Eberg, and he was also riding well there. He caused all the reaction then, and it looks like he's been doing a little bit of recuperating. Hasn't been overworking in this break, and look how he split the field. It mightn't be the split he wants here, though, but he's got a gap.
Well, look at that. Pozzato, the Italian rider, he's the man taking up the pace, making Johan Museo very comfortable there, just sitting pretty as you please in second wheel. And third wheel there in that small group just off the back there is Max van Heesewijk. The other two riders from Quick-Step have been caught out. Now that's a bit of a surprise. Tom Boonen rode very hard over those cobblestones. He's been caught at the back with his teammate Van den Broeke. I don't think he'll get very much help from Frank, but also what they have done is taken Peter Farazijn out of the picture.
With an expensive loss, if they've taken 2 riders of their own team as well. I have a feeling Bettini will reassess this, and Johan Museo will probably say, don't do it. We need our 2 guys back up here for the moment. They've got the time in hand now at 2 minutes 14, and look, they've shut it down there.
Well, it's not very much. It's about 50 metres. Van Heesewijk has seen the chance now. He knows his chances have improved because he's reduced by 50% the number of Quick-Step riders in the leading group. There's not much of a gap, and it seems to me that Boonen is doing most of the work trying to come back, and he will have been given that order. I think another move by Bettini here.
Bettini's made the move. Museo is just marshalling Pozzato. He's constantly looking over his shoulder to see where the others are. Farazijn is going to profit from this and come back into the race. One of them is crossing alone. I suspect that's Boonen, because I think Van den Broeke is feeling a little bit rough.
Well, Van den Broeke, in fact, might be feeling rough, but I think he's just recovered there because the man going off the back of this group right now is Peter Farazijn. That's a great move by Boonen, obviously got very good legs, recovered somewhat. The strange thing about professional cycling, Phil, is very often when you see a rider from one nation attack, it's a man from his own country who chases him down. Bettini, the Italian for Quick Step, here being nailed back slowly but surely by the white jersey of the Fassa Bortolo rider Pozzato, and still sitting there nice and comfortably, Johan Museeuw. I think they're trying to set this up for Johan Museeuw today because he hasn't attacked yet, and I reckon he's in pretty good form, but he's such a clever bike rider, Phil, when it comes to taxes. Van Heeswijk now takes up the counter-attack there. See how easily Museeuw moved across to the wheel of Max Van Heeswijk.
This is a fabulous stretch of racing here just now. Now they've hurt Pozzato after that great chase. Max has tried to reach him as they go over a nasty little wet stretch there on that corner. But Bettini is riding as well as we've ever seen him at this time of the year. Just recently won the Tour of the Mediterranean. We're into Overmere, onto another stretch of cobblestones, and back onto the perfect terrain for Museeuw here to close that gap up to his teammate. And this is a long stretch down King Street.
Well, I tell you what, they've opened up the gaps at one right now. You see how Bettini looked over his shoulders. Max Van Heeswijk, the sprinter, had the acceleration to close down the gap to Paolo Bettini. And Johan Museeuw, well, he's basically, Phil, just been sitting there. He's been switching from wheel to wheel. He's hardly made an effort so far, but they really haven't got that much of an advantage. And again, it actually looked as if Tom Boonen was the man just behind taking up the pacemaking.
Let's have a look. Yes, it is. Boonen on the front. Pozzato's now fallen back, so they've got rid of him for the minute. 4 behind at 2 teammates for the cost of 2 rivals. But I think the odds now will be more in the favour, and Museeuw might try to work this group away because it's 2-1, and Max Van Heeswijk is going to have his hands full here, controlling attack and counter-attack.
It's amazing. Just look at the speed of these bike riders right now. You would think they were riding on smooth roads. We're just around about 12.5 miles to go to the finish, but they're riding along here at about 50 kilometers an hour. Van Heeswijk just looking over his shoulder there to see what kind of damage was done on that last section of cobblestones. Museeuw now will have assessed the situation. He'll see he's got a teammate with him in the form of Paolo Bettini, and I think he'll be quite happy with the situation right now. Although they will not be too pleased with the presence of Max Van Heeswijk. They were former teammates, and they do know the speed that Max punches when it comes down to a sprint towards the end.
Well, Max has got his hands full whichever way you look at that. They won't want to take him along to the finish, no. Bettini's shown us to be a good teammate here. Here comes another little acceleration from him.
Well, looking down here, Phil, right now, the 3 leaders have an advantage, and it's not much more than 200 meters, but I think the fact that it's Bettini and Johan Museeuw together, they will now decide to try and put the hammer down, but there's still a long way to go. We're looking at 12.5 miles, but Johan Museeuw, I think, is quite happy with this situation right now. He realizes there's a couple more sections of cobblestones to go before the finish in Lokeren, and I think what they will try and do is get rid of Max Van Heeswijk, because he, in this group, is the man with the fastest finish.
Well, Max there just tapped Bettini on the backside to say, I'm coming through. I think he's reckoned on his odds here. He's got rid of 2 of the Quick Step plus 2 rivals. He may be opting for 3rd, better than nothing at all. I don't think he's got much chance of winning as we pass on to 20 kilometres to go. The odds are not in his favour. He can expect another series of attacks yet. But he's prepared to work with these 2 boys from Quick Step to hold off the rest now. He's eliminated Boonen and Van den Broek, Pozzato and Farazijn. And I think the gap is beginning to open here because, look, the 2 boys from Quick Step now are not helping the other 2.
Well, Boonen, I think, in 3rd position in this line will be a little bit upset because he's got the form to have been with that group, but he is, after all, the man who set up that counter-attack by Paolo Bettini. He went across a section of cobblestones with full speed on, and it was the counter-attack that actually forced the group to go clear. The most attentive rider was obviously Max Van Heeswijk. Get a chance here just to look at the leaders on the left-hand side and a 12-second gap back to the chasers on the right-hand side. Obviously, 2 men are going to chase in that back group, but I think they were the 2 weakest in the group anyway. Van Heeswijk, attentive. He's actually sharing the pacemaking with these riders right now because he realizes, Phil, that the worst he can do is a podium position. It looks like a little chat going on there between Max Van Heeswijk. Let's not forget they were former teammates, and I think obviously they may well come to some understanding to try and work together at the moment, because Max, under normal situations, would probably actually sit on a group like this. 2-1 is not very good odds.
No, there's a wry smile there off Max, because he's been outnumbered since this group got away and brought back the original breakaways, and he's always calculated his odds, that's for sure. It makes sense to work with these two right now, because it will give him at least a third place in a classic race and a great start to his new season with US Postal. I can't see anybody getting the better of two Quick-Step, not with the brains on the shoulders of Bettini and Museu. If they felt they weren't confident, they wouldn't be helping Max now. They'd be waiting for the return of the strength from the back here.
Well, I think Quick-Step have got the two most experienced bike riders in the bike race today on the attack for the moment. Paolo Bettini, a superb bike rider. You don't win the World Cup by not having a good tactical sense. And another section of cobblestones here, Overmere Heijstraat. And Johan Museu just likes to control it, doesn't he, Phil, all of the time. Look at the way he leans the bike over these cobblestones. And if you ever get a chance to come to northern France or to Belgium, you just try riding round these corners at 25, 26 miles an hour. I didn't like the way they took that one.
I wouldn't have done that if I'd have been that man. I think Bettini's not quite got the cobbled skills of Museo. That was a risky manoeuvre, especially as there's still a slight drizzle coming down. The tops of these surfaces could be a little bit greasy.
I'll tell you what, look at the way Max van Heeswijk is riding. Very comfortable there on the wheel of Johan Museu. This is probably the best Van Heeswijk has ridden over the last couple of years. He had a very good Paris-Roubaix last year. In fact, I think he finished in the top 10 on that occasion. And I tell you what, he's got the speed to be able to accelerate onto the wheel of a man like Johan Museu. But Bettini certainly was put under a bit of pressure on that section of cobblestones.
There's the list of the four chasers. We're looking at the chasers here. 16 seconds and losing ground with every pedal rev now. Back to 17. Pizzato will be feeling a bit annoyed with himself. He put in a wonderful attack. Good strong turn to counter the moves, and they just immediately took advantage of that and dispatched him to the back of the race. And a lesson learned by the 21-year-old, I hope, because certainly Museu waited for him to make his effort and then destroy him.
Be interesting to try and figure out the tactics right now. Museu, what a strong bike rider. Look at the power of that man as they're on the flatter part of the course, away from the cobblestones right now. He's asking Paolo Bettini to come forward, and I think he'll be asking Paolo Bettini to pay him a few favours towards the end of this bike race, because this bike race, Het Volk, over the years has been completely and utterly dominated by the Belgians. It's a very rare country that's come in and taken away any chance of them taking victory, and on 49 occasions, Phil, out of 58, victory has gone to the Belgian nation.
Yes, and Museu would love to be the man to make it 50 for the home side, which will be the case today if he were to win. 22 seconds, the camera from the helicopter there for the moment, foreshortening the gap. Farazijn having to work hard as well now with Pizzato, because the other two are happy for the ride. He's Wilfred Peters now talking to Frank van den Broek. Got to be pleased. They took a big gamble on Frank van den Broek, especially with his reputation, but just look at the way he settled into his first big race back from suspension.
I think Wilfred Peters there was saying, you just sit on for the moment, Frank, and Frank's saying, well, yeah, thank you very much. That's about all I can do. But it really is remarkable to see him at the top end of the sport once again. Let's just hope that for this season again he can keep himself on the straight and narrow, because he is, after all, Phil, a young man with an awful lot of talent. Let's not forget, as a youngster, as a teenager, he was actually the Belgian national champion at cross-country running. So he's really got a big engine in that body somewhere.
He's a very talented individual. He won the points competition in the Tour of Spain on the very last day. Took it off the shoulders of Robbie Hunter, which was rather a shame for the South African. Now, back at the front, as we now see these three riders clearly working together here, and I am convinced that Van Heeswijk has succumbed to the pressure of the others. He's not going to win this race while the odds are so great, but he is going to make a good result, and that's very important.
This is a nice cobble section with a nice Flemish name, the Vogelsongstraat, the Songbird Road. I tell you what, there's not too many songbirds out here in Belgium singing at the moment as these rides power along at about 50 kilometers an hour. I think, looking at the performance here of Paolo Bettini, a man who is a superbly talented bike rider, he's actually sacrificing something, expecting that Johan Museu has got the chance of getting away on these latter section of cobblestones. Museu, though, does like to control. Look at this. As soon as he feels the tempo dropping down, well, he moves straight up into #1 position.
Well, Bettini's the World Cup holder. He's proved himself since he left the side of Michele Bartoli that He can ride World Cup races himself. That's the same
someone's gone
corner
down,
where
yeah.
Bettini...
Where's his
yes.
bike?
And that is a little bit of a shame, because that's one rider down. That's Petito from Fassa Bortolo. Caught his tyre on that rut where Bettini took a risk just a couple of minutes ago. They're not catching even the 4 chasers, by the way, just now, the peloton. Never mind the 3 front runners. And there's a half minute now between the 3 front runners and the 4 chasers. But I was just talking about Bettini there. He's a World Cup holder now, and he's going to take a big interest in the first round of the World Cup, Milan-San Remo. Perhaps he'd be very happy here to back off and see Museo win. But I still think Bettini will be the first to attack. Max will have to chase him. And if Max brings back Bettini, well, watch out for Museo.
He's in a tough situation right now because he's up there with some very talented bike riders, both great winners when it comes to World Cup classics, and both men who are going to throw caution to the wind towards the end. Dangerous section of cobblestones here. In fact, although most of the cobbles this afternoon have been reasonably dry, that water there has been sprayed up by the press cars that have gone ahead in front of the bike race, and that small slither of slime on the top of the cobblestones makes it very precarious, especially when you have to go around 1 or 2 corners. Onto the smoother surface right now, Johan Museo looking across. You see how he looked across there? He wasn't looking back to see where Van Heeswijk and Bettini was. He was looking to see the gap to these 4 men on the road. Well, I can tell you, Johan, it's out to 34 seconds right now.
He wouldn't have seen them, would he, because of the crowd? And these 2 boys at the back having a free ride now. This could be a 1st, 2nd, 4th and 5th here for Quick Step, because they're getting the easy ride right now.
Well, they're not going to contribute at all to the success of this chase right now, because they know they've got their 2 leaders in the leading group of 3. And the main peloton, with all of the big favourites like McEwen and Van Pittegem, are still more than 2.5 minutes behind the 3 leaders. They're just pulling in the neutral service team car there. You just saw the black car parked at the side of the road. That indicates the gap has now definitely officially gone above the 30-second mark. These 3 riders for the moment feel working very well together, ticking away at the kilometres. 14 kilometres to go to the finish line right now, and still a couple of sections of rather tricky cobblestones. Museo looks so relaxed at the back there, just having a quick look at Max Van Heeswijk's legs, making sure that there are no telltale signs of any weakness at all. I think Van Heeswijk actually looks rather good. He's using a small gear, keeping himself as economically pedaling as economically as possible, while Museo is just waiting to turn the big gears up.
I can't believe at 37 just how good Johan Museo is looking today. Pounding the gears around, dictating the 3 of them here, I feel. 42 seconds, that's going to be a minute very soon now, and then that really is curtains for the back boys. They're not going to close that in 13 kilometres. They're still pulling away. These 3 have got the race between them, provided they don't have the bad luck of a flat tyre or a fall. But they're clear now. 13 kilometres to go, lucky for some. Number 13 in the race, Tom Bonen, is now back in the race for 4th place.
Good discussion going on there between Paolo Bettini. That cameraman getting just a little bit too close there, thank you very much. They should not get so close, especially going out of a corner like that. It's fine to get close to the bike riders on the straight part of the course, but these men are flat out racing at the moment. I think that man might get a warning from the referees tonight about his performance. But after all, everybody wants the best shots early on in the season. Van Heeswijk in the quick step sandwich right now, but still he hasn't laid down arms. He realises they need to work together until 4 or 5 kilometres to go, and then we will see the attacks coming from quick step. And I think you're right, Phil. I think the first move is most likely to come from Paolo Bettini, which will force Van Heeswijk to chase him down, and then the counterattack I think is going to come from this man who is a former world champion.
Well, he's put his earpiece back in now, which he seems to always take via his mouth, and in touch with the boss behind, constantly looking over just to make sure what's going on behind. Never trust what he hears. He visibly rides a heavier gear than Maxi. Maxi's pedaling very nicely here, but willing to work and never miss a turn. I feel here that it's in his favour, because if Bonen comes back or Van den Broeke, then the odds are increasingly going to be bad for him.
Well, Max keeps looking over his shoulder, keeps a very attentive eye on Johan Museo. Museo, very early in the season now, looking comfortable, and I think this is part of a long preparation to build up for what he hopes will be a record-winning 4th Tour of Flanders this year. A number of riders have won on 3 occasions. Nobody has ever won the Tour of Flanders 4 times, and that, I think, Phil, is why this man decided to have another crack at the classic season, and he has been for the last 10 years Mr. Classics.
Well, he's obviously done an awful lot of work over the winter. Remember that we're just on the edge of March here, and to spend the winter in Belgium and train hard is not the easiest of things to do because the weather has been cold. Europe has experienced what we would call an old-fashioned winter this year. It's quite cold, we've had some bad weather, and in Belgium, if the weather's bad, then it is bad. And I think that Museo's done an awful lot of work to come out with such good shape.
I tell you what, he is a really tough man when it comes to training. He will go out in all kinds of weather. He hails from a place called Histel, which is not too far away from the North Sea, and when the wind blows during the winter, it almost bends those trees down to the ground. And when the weather is so bad, he actually has a special room in his house where he'll put a home trainer in there with a TV on, and he'll sit on the home trainer for 4 to 5 hours. I don't think I would have the mental ability to do something quite as hard as that. Half an hour on the rollers kills me.
Well, I hope he watches the World Cycling Production videos, Paul, because that should inspire him, shouldn't it?
Absolutely, and there's a little tinkle there on the front there coming from Frank van der Broek. Here's Tom Boonen now deciding the Farazine's been dropped off the back, so these guys now have decided they want to go to rack as many places up in the top 10 as possible.
Now, Tom has sensed the Farazine has cracked, and he's going to make sure he doesn't recover with this attack. Frank van den Broek, playing the ever-faithful teammate here, will wait for Pizzato. Pizzato, at 21.5 years of age, is trying to bring back Tom Boonen. Well, 58 seconds, 11 kilometres to go, I wonder.
Well, I tell you what, a strange pedalling style here of Tom Boonen. This is the fact, I think because of the youth, he hasn't developed all of his muscles right now. He seems to have rather a gangly style and position on the bike, but I tell you what, it does push him along at a very high speed. Now he's got the gap right now, and who's going to chase? Well, it's not Van den Broek, that's for sure. The two other riders, Pizzato and Farazine, well, they've been caught out by a very smart counter-attack, which was set up by Frank van den Broek. Here are the three leaders.
Well, they won't know perhaps what's happening behind. We pass under the 10 kilometres to go, 6 miles now to the finish. And the two quick-step riders are on the front. I wonder if the word has come up already into the earpiece of Museo to say that Tom Boonen has counter-attacked the back four. And he's still clear.
Van den Broek.
Oh, it's Van den Broek. Well, he's crossed the gap and he's left Pizzato behind now. So this has put the two men free to chase. Amazing.
Well, I tell you what, Frank van den Broek, what a return to the top. Those two guys there, they will not be very happy about that at all, but I tell you what, they were weakening because their pedaling action was not eating at all into the advantage of the three-man breakaway. It's gone out now to 57 seconds, almost a minute, and the two, still want to call them Mappe, the two quick-step riders have got together. Now they will work as one to try and stay off the front of the two chasers, because I don't think they've got a chance in anything of catching up with the three leaders.
Little bit of rain still coming down here, as you can see it on the camera lens, but now we have the two quick-step boys trying to leapfrog alone to the three leaders, but they're saying it's exactly 1 minute, so even though they're away from the other two, they are still losing ground to the front trio. 9 kilometres to go. Now we have a situation where they could get first, second, fourth and fifth, or Max could spoil it for everybody and win the race.
Well, I have a funny feeling that's not going to happen right now, because we're up against some serious bike riders here. Bettini and Museo, they know all of the tricks in the trade, and Max knows that what's going to happen over the next few kilometres is they will attack alternatively, one after the other, and eventually he's just going to give up.
Well, you can never tell how Museo feels. He's just getting on with the job. He's constant. Now there's the news. The two boys are chasing, so he will know, but he'll also know that they're not gaining at 1 minute and 2 seconds. So it's just good news. It just means a little bit more money in the bank, some more euros at the finish, because they're in now for finishing in 4th and 5th places. And somewhere, two riders are going to make the top 3 here.
Well, I tell you what, I can imagine that news coming across from Wilfred Peters to Johan Museo, that the two other riders from the team have jumped away, and he's going to look at him and say, well, so what? That doesn't affect what's happening here, because we're a minute ahead of them. What we've got to do is outfox this man in the dark blue jersey of United States Postal Service, Max van Heeswijk. I think it's great to see Max on the front end of a big classic like Het Volk, but he's really up against a very difficult situation. And I hope for Johan Museo that Max doesn't give up once it's Bettini who's attacked, because I would very much like to see Johan Museo take out the win. You know, I've always been a great supporter of the Flemish Lion.
Well, Bettini, just short of his 29th birthday, amazingly enough, is the youngest man in this breakaway. As it seems to be the magic age of 30 to 35 is where all the winning victors are coming from just now. And these two chasers here getting on with the job in hand too. They're clear now, the other two. We haven't got a time gap. Oh, we might get a look though. No, we're not. On the outskirts of Locheren. Not quite at the finish yet. Still 5 miles to race. And these three riders now. Now, are they going to try something, or are they going to take it to the sprint to the line? Bettini has now gone to the front, and Museu looking a bit restless, looking over his shoulder again. I wonder.
A wily move there by Johan Museu. He forced Max van Heeswijk to take it up, and you see how the two quick-step riders are making sure that they don't follow each other through. They're trying to make sure that they keep Max van Heeswijk in the middle so they can keep a very close eye on him as well. The three of them together, a rather difficult little chicane. We're actually circumnavigating Lokeren right now, and once they get across town here, they come across to the final few kilometers, and I would say they will still look for a moment when they can put Max van Heeswijk into difficulty, but that attack will probably not come till around about 4 or 5 kilometers to go.
Well, Max has given up. I think he's just going to keep working with these boys. He's not. He'll pay attention and he'll try to defy them if they do jump him, but they may well take him to the line. I think that would be a very dangerous thing to do, because Max packs a terrifically good sprint finish in a group like this. Max also checking out the situation. The rain is getting a little bit heavier, but it's still only a mist as Max continues to stay in control and concentrate. It's good to see a US postal man in the thick of the action. A good job they signed Max van Heeswijk, because there'd been nobody else in the frame today.
I'll tell you what, if they were to take Max van Heeswijk to the finish line, that would be a very serious tactical error, because I put him down as the fastest man in this group. He's got a great sprint. He was at one part in his career regarded as possibly becoming a big road sprinter, but unfortunately he seemed to be a little bit unnerved when it comes to charging to the line in a situation where there are 150 men. Oh, there's a Museu move here.
Here we go. As we're in the streets of Locheren, 6 kilometers to go. The reaction has got to come from Max. Museu looks over his shoulder, and is he going to ease, or is he going to keep going? Now Max is inching it closer and closer. Bettini has done his job as a policeman, and that one didn't work. Watch out for Bettini.
Well, that's a strange move by Museu, because it wasn't an ideal situation just coming up to that corner to try and fox Max van Heeswijk. The advantage Van Heeswijk has got, Phil, is that he is a sprinter. He is able to accelerate across a gap like that. Bettini now has realised that was maybe a false start to the hostilities here, and he's gone to the front to take up the pacemaking. They don't have to worry about the two chasers, Frank van den Broeke and Boonen. They're over a minute behind right now. Museu coming up alongside Van Heeswijk here, onto the wheel of his teammate Bettini. We're still 6 kilometers, 4 miles to go to the finish. And I tell you what, Max van Heeswijk is starting to look rather good here. He's out of the saddle. He has been using a smaller gear, and he's probably got one ear forwards and one ear backwards right now, waiting to hear if he can feel the acceleration and the rush of wind from another move. Oh, I'm not sure. Old Johan getting a bit twitchy, isn't he?
Well, this is he's delivered one warning, and Max now is trying to keep these two split by riding in the middle. They've changed partners at the front with Museu, which indicates possibly a move going to come from Paolo Bettini, who's been a very strong man throughout the day here. Now a little chat. Just a quick word. Museu might have said give it a go, see if you can stretch Van Heeswijk.
Well, I tell you what, around about 2 kilometers to go, there's rather a difficult bridge over one of the local rivers here. We're inside the 5 kilometer banner right now, but there's oh, that's a clever move by the man from Histel.
So through on the outside, or is it the inside? I'm not too sure now. And Bettini's back into the job of watching Van Heeswijk. Now Museu is going to put his head down and make it heard that little bit more. I think Max is going to recover from this one, but it's the second hit in a kilometre against him. I'm not sure he is going to make it, Paul.
Well, it's not been closed down just yet. He really needs to get out of the saddle. He was looking under to see the position of Paolo Bettini there right now. Well, it's not much. He's clawing his way back. I think he's actually slowly but surely clawing his way back. But Museu, that was a crafty move. You know, he waited till everybody was looking the other way and right up through the inside. It looks as if Max is just starting to close it down, but what a tough player Museu is.
I'm not so sure here, because Van Heeswijk is having to do all of the work, constantly thinking, well, if I catch him, the guy behind's going to go, and can I lift the speed again? Because this time Museo has given his top shot in the hope that he will crack Max van Heeswijk, or at best make him work hard to rejoin.
Oh, I don't know, Max is riding nice and sensibly here, but actually, although it looks as if it's coming back, it seems to be staying the same distance. 4 kilometers to go right now. The distance between them, it's not much more than 25 or 30 bike lengths. But when the man who is opening up the gap is called Johan Museo, that gap is very difficult to nail back. And Bettini is like a limpet mine, just sitting there waiting. Look at him, he's so relaxed, he's happy right now. If it does come back together, he's going to launch the counter.
Just on a kilometre now, that gap has locked in at around about, I don't know, 75 metres maybe. And Max has it all to do, and I've got a feeling the elastic is just about to snap, because Max is not closing in here. The time on the screen is the chasing riders behind. They're not coming any closer. In fact, with the counter-attack like this, they're going to lose more ground. And poor Max is really in the quick-step sandwich now. He doesn't know what to do, because he might gamble on a second place now. Now it's more or less decision time by Johan. His mouth wide open. How many times have we seen a shot like this when he's been winning a major race?
It's a strong bike rider. Looking over, he can see the gap right now. In fact, it looks now, Phil, I know it's always difficult. It looks as if that gap is starting to stretch. Van Heeswijk, I think, now has decided whichever way I go, if I ride back to Museo, I'm going to get attacked by Bettini. Maybe the best thing is just to ride at a steady pace, hope that Museo cracks towards the finish, and keep a little bit under the belt to try and get myself second place.
Sitting right back on the saddle there, keeping that wheel on the wet surface as he makes a nice left-hand turn now, change of wind direction, and that might prove curtains for Max as he comes round that corner behind. Still Bettini on his wheel. This is a long straight road, and it's a depressing road when you're in hot pursuit or you're blazing the trail, as is the case now of Johan Museo. This could be the perfect start to the season for the new team.
Well, it could be. 3 kilometers to go. It shouldn't take him more than 4.5 minutes of effort right now. Van Heeswijk just sitting there, the gap slowly but surely increasing. I would make it around about the 100-meter mark right now, which is about 10 seconds in professional cycling terms. Paolo Bettini just sitting there, the faithful lieutenant, a man who will ask Johan Museo for favours later on in the season. All he has to do is sit there right now, Phil, and hope that Max van Heeswijk doesn't come back, because this team, Quick-Step Daviton, are completely and utterly in control of the bike race. For the moment, they have 4 men in the first 5 on the road.
At 2 kilometers to go, surely this is going to be it now for Johan Museo, a rider who's racing for the 100th win of his career and the 50th Belgian victory in this race.
Well, Max has given up there. You saw him looking over his shoulder. He thought, well, I might as well just hold on right now. I'm not going to nail back Museo, but if I don't use too much energy over the next couple of kilometers, I should be able to get second, because he's a great sprinter.
Well, Museo now has just got to hang on, although he looks immensely strong. Last year he made second in the Tour of Flanders, beaten by Andrea Taffy. He finished 1 place in front of Peter van Petegem. That long straight road, you can see your rival. There he is on the brow of the hill. Max being made to do all of the chase, and if he slows down, he knows that there are 2 more quick-step riders going to join the fray. That's the last thing he wants, so he's got to keep going. He'd be lucky to get second now, frankly.
Well, this is the bridge where I thought the last attack of the day could come, and I think Johan Museo taking serious advantage of that. He's a very strong bike rider. You can see right now Max van Heeswijk has given up the chase after Johan Museo. Paolo Bettini will just set a tempo on the front to make sure that the gap between Johan Museo and the second place is a nice, safe one. But Max van Heeswijk will try and get a bit of a breather over the next kilometre or so and try and come round Bettini in the sprint.
The great figure of Johan Museo, former world champion, the heart of Belgium, and he comes to racing in Flanders. He just checks over his shoulder every occasion he gets just to see if anything is happening, but he knows now that he's into the last kilometre. He's going to enjoy what is the final 1,000 metres of 200 kilometres today. Slightly iffy weather conditions, but the rain largely has kept away. The field behind is still around about 60 strong, but we haven't seen it for most of the commentary. Now we're into the streets of Lokeren. Belgium's 50th victory in what is only the 58th Het Volk, and that is a superb record to say the least. But this rider today as he's so often done with the teams he's ridden with under Patrick Lefevre, has shown us how to win a race on pure tactics.
Absolute and utter tactics. He was in the right place at the right time. Every time we came to one of the critical points of this bike race, whether it was the Muur de Grammont or the Molenberg, or the final cobbled sections, and now he rides into the last 200 metres. It may well be for the last time in Het Volk, but he's going to enjoy it.
You never know when it's your last win at 37 years of age. This might be it, so enjoy it. A marvellous crowd here as Johan Museeuw comes home, and look, a very good time, inside 5 hours for 200 kilometres. And Belgium are off to a great start to the classic season in Europe. Victory for Johan Museeuw. He will watch, well, we want to see the sprint. Let's hope our camera doesn't hover there too long. And now the sprint is on. Bettini is going to have a go, but I think Max has got the determination to get second. And that's a fabulous ride by Max van Heeswijk today. Bettini salutes the crowd, the World Cup holder. He crosses the line in third place. There'll be a little bit of a wait to see the quick step sprint. And there they are. Max van Heeswijk, the press there looking for the story. Paolo Bettini saying excuse me as he comes over in third place, but the man they all want to speak to, of course, will be Johan Museeuw. Now I think we're going to go back at least a minute and possibly more to the sprint between Van den Broek and Tom Bonen. Still clear, the last we heard, of that chase group. This man takes it all in his stride. You'd think it's just another day in the life of.
He's a tough bike rider, I tell you what, Phil. He really has got a big thank you to say to Paolo Bettini. Grazie mille. And,
oh, look at this.
Well, this is amazing. Look at this. This is absolutely fabulous. On the right-hand side there, Frank van den Broek. On the left-hand side, Tom Bonen. They're not going to sprint it out.
First, third, fourth and fifth. What a day for Quick-Step de Wieteman. Well, if they try to go over, well, I was going to say if they try to go over with their hands together, you bet your life the judges will split them, so check the wheels out and see who gets it first. And it's Frank van den Broek who will get the place of fourth, just ahead of Tom Bonen. That's a remarkable return to big-time cycling for Frank.
Well, it's a really great start to the season for the new team, Quick-Step de Wieteman, because for them, what a domination, and it shows that they're again going to be a force when it comes to the one-day classics. Wilfred Peters there, out of the team car now, up alongside Johan Museeuw, and it smiles all around.
Yes, he's put a bit of weight on, Wilfred has, since he was usually leading out or looking after Johan Museeuw in races like Paris-Roubaix just a couple of seasons ago. And Museeuw is older than Wilfred, by the way. Oh dear me, look at all those muscles.
Look at all those ribs, he's pretty thin at the start of the year as well. There's congratulations to Paolo Bettini. I would think it would be congratulations to the whole of the team, because what a fine performance, and what an interesting return to the top of the sport for Frank van den Broek here. And a little bit worse for the wear. And the next sprint is going to be here, Pozzato and Peter Farazijn.
Oh, the man of the future at 21.5 years of age. It looks like Peter Farazijn is going to give best, so Pozzato gets sixth. The 2.5 minutes have gone by, 2:39 it says there, and the Farazijn comes over in seventh place. Now let's, here's the big rush for the finish now. This will be the bunch sprint. Robbie McEwen will still be in there, Peter van Petegem, and there's still a huge peloton here. But there's still a way out, so they're going to be over 3 minutes behind when they come to the line. So they never made any progress at all on that breakaway of 7 as they continue to race for the line here now. A big lead out here by one of the riders from US Postal, but he's fading now as the rush comes. That looks like Roman Veenstein's trying to get in the yellow, the new colours here, and probably that's the rider from Seiko, I think, is Fabio Sacchi, but this is going to be a straight sprint for the line now. McEwen is trying to get through, a little bit boxed in here as he comes up to the line, and Veenstein's, his old sprint has come back. The former world champion, a bump of shoulders, wasn't too happy there. That was Balducci bumping shoulders, but Veenstein's taking out the bunch sprint. There's the young face of Tom Bonen, not really worried who won the bunch sprint, I suppose.
Well, it's not important for these guys. The important thing for them was to get first blood when it came to the Belgian races. They really did get one over on Lotto Domo today, and I think we'll hear a lot more about the rivalry of these two teams over the next few months, especially as we go into the one-day classics in Belgium. Well, really, it was our team who took all of the initiative, and then because of that, when we got to the group, we had all of the best riders at the front. And in the area over the hills, that's when it all happened, and that's why we had the best of our team at the front: Museo, Bettini, Vandenbroek, Bonen. And then when we got down towards the final, towards the end, it was pretty good to have Bettini up alongside me. And
well, as so often is the case there with Johan Museo, he always makes it sound easier than it really is. At 37 years of age, he's now won 100 races since he turned professional back in 1988. He had the pleasure too of watching the sprint for second place being taken out by an ex-teammate, while his other teammate Paolo Bettini taking third place. An excellent start indeed. You can't get much better than that for Quick-Step de Wieteman. So let's have a look at the result. Museo finishing, Hestrik, Bettini, Vandenbroek, Bonen, top 5 men. Of the 7 who broke away, they claim the top places of the day. Weinsteins perhaps coming in for another good year. He had a bad one last year, taking out the bunch sprint ahead of his teammate Balducci. McEwen there, getting third in the best from the rest race. Kim Kirchen of Luxembourg also up there.
Het is de heer Jan Hoed die de schitterende trofee over aan moet slaan. Johan Museo, geef hem nog maar eens een applaus, dames en heren. Johan Museo.
So, a nice round of applause for the first winner of the first big classic race of the year in Belgium. Johan Museo has got his nation off to a marvellous start. Max van Heeswijk, it all's well for him too, as he now starts his new career with the team US Postal. Hope you've enjoyed the coverage. From Paul Sherwin, I'm Phil Liggett saying we'll see you as the season unrolls. Goodbye for now. Well, I hope you enjoyed yet another cycling video from World Cycling Productions as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Now, what many of you probably don't know is that I'm also the international editor of Cycle Sport, a fully international magazine which brings you all of the up-to-date news in the cycling world. It brings you profiles and reports of the top bike races and also stories of the men that make the news. And it keeps you up to date too with the technical innovations in our sport. I think we produced the magazine using some of the world's best writers. I know we certainly have one of the world's best photographers in Graham Watson. If you love cycling, you should see this book, and here's how you go about getting a subscription. Subscribe to Cycle Sport and we'll send you a free WCP video. Just call the number listed or visit our website cyclesportmag.com for a complete listing of the free videos available and for other special offers too. Don't miss this chance. I'm sure you'll love the magazine and I look forward to visiting you each month through my column. Colnago is one of the perennial favourites of riders on the pro peloton. Why? Because Colnago bikes win races. Over history, Colnago bikes have been ridden to victory in the Giro d'Italia, in the Tour of Flanders, and a record-breaking 5 times in Paris-Roubaix. In fact, they've won the last 5 out of 6 editions of this great event. Now that's one amazing bike. World Cycling Productions is the exclusive catalogue distributor of Colnago frames in America. To see more about these magnificent frames, simply call the numbers on the screen for a World Cycling Productions catalogue or visit our website at www.worldcycling.com. WCP is one of the largest Colnago dealers in North America, with selection and pricing to ensure that you can own one of these magnificent bikes.